Welcome to the LaunchFamily Podcast, where we make sense of modern parenting one real conversation at a time. I'm your host, Jessica Shelley, a former teacher, mom of six, and your guide through the everyday chaos and deeper questions of raising kids today. In this episode, we're talking about something so many parents need to hear. You're not broken, and neither is your child. My guest today is Treichae Holmes, a former special education teacher, board-certified behavior analyst, postpartum doula, and mom of two. She brings together her clinical training and lived experience to support families of neurodivergent kiddos, not with judgment or quick fixes, but with empathy, tools, and a deep commitment to building peace in the home. If you've ever felt like the systems around you are trying to fix your child or like you've lost your own identity in the process of parenting, this is the conversation for you. Treichae, welcome to the show.
Thank you. Thank you for having me.
Yes. Well, to get us started, let's give our listeners a little bit of context for who you are. So can you tell us a little bit more about your own journey to motherhood and how has this transformed the way that you think about parenting and child development?
Yeah, of course. So I have always been the auntie of aunties. I just always thought that I loved taking care of other people's children and then really well and then sending them back home. I worked at daycares. My first job was a summer camp. I loved it. I loved working with children with all kinds of needs. And even in my high school practice, went from going pre-med for college to adaptive physical education just because I got some experience working with the students with disabilities in their PE class as a senior in high school and decided that forget about med school. This is for me. I felt at peace with working with neurodivergent peers and individuals. And so from there, I thought that I didn't ever thought I would have children. I thought I'd be auntie for life. Not that I didn't want them. I just never thought I would. And um, I was able to start practicing as an adapted PE teacher, special educator, and then board certified behavior analyst without having children of my own. And I look pretty young. This is a humble brag, I would say. I am known to look really young, and so when I was even younger, I looked even younger, and so I would go into families' homes or people's classrooms, working with their children and talking to them about how to change their parenting strategies and what to do different in their homes. I'd be working with their child and try to tell them to make arrangements in their environment. And I'd get a lot of, you'll see when you have kids of your own. You just don't know yet because you don't have children. And I would always be like, oh, yeah, you, right? How dare you? I mean, even still, I would never say that to an individual because they didn't know my journey. My husband and I were trying to get pregnant, and I did want to be a mother once I got married, and we went through some fertility studies, and I ended up getting pregnant with my son while I was in school for my PhD. All the while, my twin sister lost her pregnancy, and so we dealt with just a lot of family grief and seeing how fragile and how special it is to become a parent and the process to becoming a parent. And so while I was right in the throes of a PhD and working a lot, I was at the University of Utah running a grant program that they had there, supporting 150 families that came up to the university for a program that they had for the kids with disabilities and teaching courses, all of these things. We got pregnant and I had my son. And now I'd like to say that he is my dissertation. He's 10 now. So that means that I did not finish my PhD. I left all the dissertation. I was in the middle of my dissertation project and I was like, whoa, there are so many people in the world. How? I had my son. Like I was so anxious. I was watching his every move. I was staring over him like, is he alive? Is he going to survive the next 5 seconds? The responsibility was huge. I had all these skills as a behavior analyst. I had gone into other people's homes and seen how some homes were so tidy and they had multiple children. And I had this one, and I was like, how do I make sure he doesn't die by blinking and pick up this
True.
thing over here and cook dinner and all the things? And so I got to have this firsthand view of not just childhood and child development, but what some of the caregivers that I'd experienced might have been going through if the birthing process was what they wanted it to be. Maybe they had a little more peace when their child was an infant or growing up. If their birthing process did not go as they expected, or there was any kind of birth trauma during that time, that might highly impact how they parent their child. So, other clinicians that I knew would be like, "Oh, this is a helicopter mom over here. Like they're always in the way, or this mom is never around. They don't. It's like they don't care about the kid." But just really having some perspective on that, we don't know the full story. No one ever knows the full story. It doesn't matter if I'm in someone's home supporting their parenting. I still don't know the full story. So it, it really transformed my curiosity, my level of empathy and compassion and understanding. And then for child development, I had a second child less than 2 years later. And with the first, I had major postpartum anxiety, the second, major postpartum depression. And all the while, I'm a highly skilled teacher trying to teach these kiddos how to human. And I learned that parenting is powerful, that they really can learn so much from us, even in those really early years, and just how we model our responses to stress, or how we model, in general, our responses to big feelings and emotions. And that we are really some really great teachers when we know what we're doing, and that they can learn a lot of skills too, a lot of language, a lot of just skills, but we have to have the tools.
I love that perspective. And I think like, my journey has started as an educator as well. And I actually had my first son like 3 weeks after I finished my student teaching. So it was like a launch into motherhood, all of the things. I remember my first couple years as a classroom teacher, my administration would come to me and she's like, "Oh, well, just wait till you have to develop your mom voice. Like, oh, just wait." And it's
Right.
like, okay, well, I'm not gonna yell at my kids. Like, I'm not gonna be like that. And I mean, there are moments that in the weakness, when they've pushed that button, it's like, oh, there it goes. Like, I can feel it escaping
Yeah.
my mouth right now before I can even pull it back in.
Yes.
I think to your point too of like being that good example and like thinking about how we can be more intentional because they're picking up every little thing that we do. They're master observers. They're soaking it all in little sponges. And so the intentionality is a huge part of parenting. Of like, oh my goodness, I have to think about exactly what I'm going to say, the tone that I say it, the way that I approach it, right? And we had another episode where we were talking about specifically like conversations at like the adolescent period, which is like a whole other sort of ball game.
Right.
So, from your experience, in special education and, working with the population of kids and ABA therapy and all of those things, what were some of those things that just like didn't sit right with you as you kind of started looking at it more closely?
Right. There was a time that I wanted to be done with not the population I was working with, but the job of that we were given. And what didn't sit right with me was this thought or mindset of, let's fix it. This is wrong in my household, my family, my child, this person. Fix it. Fix them. Fix their academic deficits. Fix fix their behavioral deficits. Fix their personality is what it also sounded like. Fix who they are. And it never sat with me. Like even when I was in high school and doing the partners in PE program and loving it, I wanted to understand my peers first. I wanted to get to know who they were, and then learn what was the best way of teaching them, and not just take my way, right? And so by and large, because of systems promoted skill acquisition progress. You track this needs to be done in this amount of time, which, I mean, that is what special education is. You set a goal and you work towards it. There's not typically a goal for learning your learner across a good amount of time so that you can develop the most effective teaching strategy for them. It's start day one, right?
Mm-hmm.
Do the thing. Use this evidence that we've given you and do that with all these kids in your room. And as a behavior analyst, it can be pretty similar. Here's your evidence-based practices, apply them now. That's applied behavior analysis. And while there are some safeguards in place for conditioning yourself as someone who's reinforcing to your learner and all of that, where's the learning your learner part of the industry, right? And so I would be doing that. I mean, I still did it, even though it's not part of the industry. But I wouldn't be supported, right? Always. hurry up and get to the fixing part. Please get to it. And that will never sit well with me. And it doesn't now. And I want, I have this value for humans to feel valid as a human, whether they're a child, adult, adolescent, adult, be valid in who they are and who they were originally made to be. And so I kept this word like fix this or show progress here. It really just started making me think that we're promoting brokenness, I think, and teaching our learners that something's wrong with them. They're broken, our children. I've been working with you on this for so long. Why haven't you gotten it yet? Right? You already know better. You know better. That's the phrase most parents use. You know better, yet they're still doing different, right? So you know better. Why are you still doing this? Why are you still doing that? Blah, blah, blah. And so while understanding that parenting is powerful, I understand that this mindset of something's wrong, we need to fix it can also be so damaging and to who someone thinks they are, who they are. So I say now that no one's broken. If a parent wants to come to us, they're not broken. I'm not fixing anything. They're whole. Everyone starts as whole.
I love that. Like very affirming too of you are as you are, and then there's like strategies that you can utilize to navigate things, but everybody has strategies. Uniquely, we are all unique. We are all whole. I was having a conversation with someone else who's doing some like research around like twice exceptional kiddos. And we were talking about how the society, like in the United States, is focused on deficits, right? Like we invest so much time and resources into fixing what we perceive as deficits instead of utilizing resources to enable gifts, right? Like I'm like, I get goosebumps just thinking about it because it's so true. It's like if your child is very gifted with music, why are we worried about their math grade in pre-algebra?
Right.
Like you should be spending money on music lessons, not on a tutor. Like
For
it
math.
will be okay.
Right.
Yeah. So
Right. The same amount of money
yes.
applied to their gift.
Yes.
Music is math. So, I mean, I know that was just an example, but you
Yeah.
will find that by supporting strengths, enabling gifts, I love that wording. You could, as a byproduct, support what someone's quote unquote deficit area. And also, it's like who cares? Honestly, who set this standard that we all have to have these things? There's so many options for supporting strengths and enabling strengths. Why do we get so stuck in this
Exactly.
standard box?
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, realistically, like the foundational knowledge that we use to move through life is pretty much learned by like fifth or sixth grade. Like reading comprehension and reading skills get more advanced as you encounter like more complex texts and things. But that's also not the path of everyone. Like, not everyone's going to end up in college. Like, they're going to be a trade or they're going to be a musician or an artist or whoever they're going to be. And so, like, their whole, I think about like the perception of self too when academics get harder in middle school and high school and you feel like you have to be like you have to have more independence in navigating all of those things, the bar is like perceived to be higher, right?
Exactly.
And then these like narratives that we tell ourselves through those adolescent years of like, oh, I'm less than, or oh, I'm horrible at math, I'm never going to be good at math. It's like, okay, well, you can do math for your business, look at home
Exactly.
15 years and you can do all of this. So
Exactly.
we get so caught up in, I think, like those arbitrary sort of societal standards when in reality, like we're all filled with so much potential and so many gifts. And I wonder if effort was just diverted elsewhere, how the world could look?
Exactly. Exactly. And I feel like in special ed, they at transition age, speaking of adolescence, when a learner is going into middle school or at 14, if you know this, they start to think about transition skills and post-secondary goals, right? So this is built in to the special education process. And they start doing interviews for what do you want to be when you grow up and inventories to kind of survey what could a potential career path would be so that across time before they leave that educational setting, they would kind of have some skills in the area of their interest. And I think that that's actually wonderful. Wish that we had this mindset in just our everyday life. Like we said, all right, my son is 10. Now your foundational skills are here. Who are you? And how do I teach you how to learn who you are? And through my parenting, through my modeling, through how I speak with you, how do I help affirm who you are so that whether you score, through the ballpark on your academics moving forward or low, like you know who you are, what your interest is, and you have a pathway for values, beliefs, and for the rest of your life. And that this other stuff is here, going to school, getting the grades, blah, blah, blah. But who you are is the most important. That's extra.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah. The people part of life is the whole part of life.
it is.
Oh, you have to be a person first. And so, you had mentioned like your goal is restoring peace in the home. So what does peace look like for families that you work with, or you can even speak from like your own experience? What does this look like in practice?
Yeah. So typically, in practice, families are seeking caregiver support and training because they're finding themselves being completely reactive in moments where they are triggered and then their child is triggered and there's yelling, there's chaos. No one is usually the disruption of peace looks like lack of structure, routine, or a tool to manage hard or big feelings. And so restoring peace in the home usually just means equipping with the tools that family, like a piece for every family does not look the same, but that family needs in order for each individual in that space to have room to care for themselves and then to walk or live, behave, and act according to their values. So their broad family values and then their individual values. But if mom is the only one concerned about everybody's values, then there's still not peace in the home, right? Because she's one of the individuals there. So that means developing and teaching tools after understanding the inner workings of their household, developing, so we say equip, educate, and empowering them with tools for getting ahead of big feelings. But then when they come around, how we manage ourselves, how we co-teach or co-regulate our children, our partners, grandma, mother-in-law, whoever is around, then how we respond, not react, when things don't go as planned, right? So equipping with some tools that can be used with consistency and that serve as appropriate long-term models, and knowing that what we do today impacts what our children will do with our grandchildren, right? Or what our children take other places with them. So it really looks like understanding what peace looks like for each family, and then providing with the tools so that to create space for each individual to know what their own values are and then to move accordingly. Um, and that really, on a very practical, objective view, looks like people have time for themselves. We talk a lot about self-care, not in the go get your nails done and take a shower thing. Like, what does that mean for each individual? For some people, that is they need to go take a million showers a day. That's just what they like. They don't care if they have all the good smelling things. They just want to be in the shower or taking breaths. Truly, and when I ask parents, how many breaths do you take in a day? They're like, I breathe all the time. I'm always breathing air. Like, well, that one, like probably at the end of the day when the kids are settled and everyone's in bed. We talk about that. So peace in the home would look like affording yourself many, plentiful opportunities to breathe, which is the resource that we all have, no matter our skin color, race, socioeconomic status, nationality. If we have this air, we deserve to be able to breathe it. For some reason, when we become parents, we start holding our breath. And peace looks like starting there, affording yourself the resources that are available to you by breathing, I talk about taking breaths like snacks. I mean, are you taking your breath in one meal? Are you intermittent fasting and breathing? You're just doing one big meal at the end of the day? one single breath before you close your eyes because you got all your 6 kids ready for bed on time and you did the thing. Whew, cleaned the kitchen, I made this good dinner, go to sleep next day, right?
Do it all again and
Right,
take one breath again.
right,
Or what would you
1, just 1, but you remember when we're born, what are they one of the first things they're checking for a baby born is breath. Are they breathing, right? It is when someone passes, the last thing that you see is they take their last breath. But in the in between, while we're living, in the short time that we're here, we let the stressors of life and parenting deprive us of this natural resource of just breath. And we just know with science that by allowing us ourselves this, then our brain is able to access all these tools that some special ed teacher, behavior analyst, coach, executive coach somewhere, podcast, TikTok, Instagram may be teaching you. There's all kinds of tools out there. But yeah, we're still yelling at our kids, having a hard time, all this because how are we accessing the tools? So peace restoration means really digging into how do we even use the skills taught to us when it is taught to us so that our home functions effectively.
Yeah. I think another thing too that's coming to mind as you're talking about breathing is like that's the human nature, right? That is what makes us human too, is that we are breathing and we're alive and living through this experience. And to your point too of, there's information all around us. When it comes into actual practice, we somehow miss it. Right. And so I think back to like the educator days when we're talking about modeling and we like practice routines and we practice procedures so that a fire drill, for example, like if we never practice what a fire drill looks like, what it would look like if you try to get 30 or 150 kids out of a building in an
Right?
organized way if there's an emergency? Like, no, we practice that. So if there was ever a fire, everyone knows what is happening, what the expectations are, how we're moving together, where to meet, all of the like logistics. And so I can speak just for myself. I'll just put myself on the spot here. But I will say one of the biggest struggles that I had is taking the time to practice these skills when I'm not in an escalated state. Because if I am in an escalated state, there is no way anything is going to be crossing my brain at all. I'm like, I got to get through this next like 30 seconds. I'm not like, oh yeah, I remember we talked about taking a deep breath. No, that's
Nope.
not what I'm thinking of. So
Exactly.
if we're only taking a deep breath at the end of the day, okay, great. That's a good start. At least there's one breath.
Yeah,
But
exactly.
can we maybe be more intentional about the things that we're practicing so that when we do get into those situations, we feel more prepared, or our default is what we would want to actually have come out?
Right. Right. Instead of your mother, that thing that we say, I'm sounding like my mother. Like I hear my mother come out of my mouth. No offense to the mothers, like but all the things. I'll never say that to my kids. That's the becomes the default because we didn't practice. Just like in the fire drill, running around chaotically would be the default without the. I mean, just like in a actual fire, running around chaotically would be the default if the drills weren't practiced. So I love that as a example, a metaphor or analogy for giving yourself the opportunity to practice out of context. And that really is what that looks like in caregiver sessions. It might feel annoying, like, just tell me what to do when my child is having a tantrum, right? But we're going to take a breath right now because the reality is that I'm going to tell you what to do when your child is having a tantrum or give you some suggestions, some tools. But is your brain going to be able to access that without practice? And so going through literally what happens in the brain, we call it like flipping your lid, and you're looking at brain anatomy for what the amygdala does and the prefrontal cortex does, and where how your brainstem is connected to the rest of your body and will tell it how to move. So if you want to grab the belt first, because that's what is your default, is let me go get my belt, let me pop you on the hand, let me do this thing. That's your default. You might have learned in this space or another, Instagram, TikTok, whatever, paid for a class on how to do something different, but we need to practice what clears our brain, what gets us regulated so that we can access the new information. And then we have to practice it repeatedly with consistently outside of the context of the big feeling and within the context of the big feeling so that it can become the new default. It has neuroplasticity. That's a beautiful gift that our brains are able to do, is learn a new skill with repeated practice.
I love it. I'm so fascinated too by the brain. Like the capabilities is like beyond anything that I think we could like comprehend of the true power of like the thought and the practice and all of those things to reinforce the actual behavior, the way that your body moves.
Exactly.
You know, you had mentioned that you have like three core questions that you explore in your work. So can you walk us through what those are and why they matter as we're going on this journey of discovery and bringing peace to our homes?
Yeah. So there are some questions that I asked, and I would like to say where I got them from. So there's a acceptance and commitment therapy for parent training resource by Lisa Coyne and Evelyn Gould that I took a training on, and they asked these questions. They're the three wishes questions, and I use them for myself and when I'm supporting families. And that is, what's three wishes for your learner child? Sometimes it's not even a child. That's why if I say learners, because sometimes they're older than child. They're a young adult or their partner. They're, it could be a elderly parent. What are your wishes? And uh, that's usually a pretty easy question to answer because that's why they're here. I can't get my elderly aunt to go to the bathroom. I can't get her to do this. I wish that she would be able to be on her own. I wish my adolescent son would make better decisions and have a life where he can have a family and be safe and stay out of jail, whatever it is. So those are pretty easy to answer. But then the next two questions are, what are your wishes for your family? Three of them. That means the unit, the family as a whole. So talk about peace restoration in the home. That comes up quite often as an answer to that. I want my home to be peaceful. I want my family to be able to take vacations and I want everyone to be happy. I don't know, we get that quite often. And then there's three wishes for yourself. And so that one is actually the most difficult. And sometimes there's tears. Many times there's tears because a lot of parents or caregivers at all, even if it's of someone else that they're caretaking, have forgotten about themselves and who they were before their caregiver role, who they are within it, but just who they are independent of the other party, the learner. That's teachers and their students. That's parents of their children. That's sometimes wives of their husbands and husbands of their wives, and even caregivers of adults. So, um, to help reconnect them to themselves, I ask these questions just to bring awareness that you exist too. A default at that stage tends to be to return to something with the kids or something with the partner or something with the other party, and I'm like, just talking about you, just you. So think about 16-year-old you, let's say, what were some of those? If you did have a transition plan, what would be some of the things that would have been identified then? You start to learn. People remember that they wanted to go to cosmetology school or that they like to play basketball and that roller skating is really fun for them, just remember that they have an identity. They outside of being a wife, a mom, a daughter, daughter-in-law, whatever that is. And many times there's some resistance that can happen, whether it's culturally or religiously, and just this is my identity now. My identity is as parent. And I do like to validate that. I understand, right? This is the most important job. Like now we are humans. Life is learning how to be a human is the life. That's what you said earlier. And then we brought some other people in that didn't ask to be here. They didn't put in an application for, hey, please, can I be born to that mom, Miss Jessica Shelley and Treichae Holmes? They didn't ask to be here. But I had my wants and needs and I met them with children. So now it's a big responsibility and it is powerful and I understand that my role as the mother to my children is very important. I take it very seriously. However, I also know that because I'm modeling how to human, I need to model how to recognize myself as an individual as well, how to have boundaries, how to set limits for them so that I can have space for myself, how to ask for support from others, how to build my support village because mamas do and need time to themselves. Parents really do, without guilt, need time to themselves. So that the value is to be the best version of yourself or the best parent you can be, that's how you're gonna get there, is by taking care of yourself. Because do we want our kids to learn not to take care of themselves? We're modeling for them. Is this how what humaning is? They're just watching us. How do I human again? Oh, yes, you forget it that you exist and start taking care of everybody else. That's how you human. Is that what we want to teach?
Oh god.
I know.
That's a little painful to hear. Oh my goodness, but it's so true, right? Like, and I know in other conversations too, like, okay, well, let me take a step back because I want to bring up something that you said of like asking for help, right? If I saw that a lot with the kids in my classroom, and I'll speak from that experience where, you know, the kid who's afraid to raise their hand and ask for help, right? If they never see their parents, if they never see their teachers, if they never see their coaches ask for help from other people, we're subconsciously conditioning them to never ask for help. And then we get mad when they don't ask for help. And it's like, hold on a minute.
Wait,
Where have they ever seen this in their life?
that's a part of humaning? Like, yeah, you never do it. Why would I just suddenly do that? Yes.
Oh my gosh. I feel like if we were not on a call right now, my mouth would be on the floor. Like my mind is blown. Like it is so true. But like, and then even like the apology, right? Like that was another conversation that we've had where, you know, oh, I never saw my mom never apologized to me when she messed up, so then I just don't have that ownership, so I never learned how to say sorry and truly mean it, like, "Oh, say you're sorry. Oh, share. Okay, are you sharing? Are you sharing as a parent? Like, what are you
Exactly.
doing? What
Yes.
is happening?"
Yes.
Like, we seem to forget that those little eyes, like, they are the sponge, right? And then the frustration of, "Oh, well, they're copying exactly what you do, and that's causing frustration," and all of the things. Whoa. This is yeah, this is, I think, incredibly eye-opening, at least for me. The listeners may have it all, like, figured out and everything.
I still don't. Like, I don't even come to space with saying that I have it figured out. I Yes, it is eye-opening because now, I mean, no pressure, but pressure, right? And really, if the pressure is take care of yourself, then
Right?
I mean, it's not so bad, right? So I know that it can feel like, oh, it's so hard to hear, but why have we made it this hard to hear that it's important for you to value yourself as a whole, worthy, deserving human being? So now please say this thing, come up with these routines, ask for help so that your child, one, sees you as a human who is whole, deserving, and supported. They can feel that way. You have space now to use your tools to do that. So it's hard to hear, and we may not want to notice it, but just acknowledging that we have the power to really shift our kids' perspectives of who they are, what they deserve, by the way that we act. That's it. How we treat ourselves. That's it. When we're really stressed out and work is going terribly and it's really difficult, how are we managing the stress? Did I teach them to hide away and dig yourself into it? Did I teach them to acknowledge it aloud and ride the wave of the stress? What did I teach them to just put it down and pretend it doesn't exist, or to blame others for the stress, right? To now take it out on them. And so this comes up is such like a aha moment during caregiver trainings. It's just like, oh my goodness, like what I do impacts what my child does. Without the curriculum and these tools here and all these things, just that alone, what I'm actually doing with my own body and self is the first teacher. Like if we crawled around all day, do you think our kids would start walking? Right? Tarzan exists as Tarzan because his models of how to be did other things.
Yeah.
When they're born, they look to us to learn how to human. We are their models of humaning. So how are we humaning within ourselves from mindset to our actionable behaviors? And so we're really those questions are meant to really assess values and where our mindset is, because that our values to impact our actions, and we start to notice and call things that, well, this is the value. You want your home to be peaceful, but what is your behavior? Is it moving you towards your value or away from it, right? So we start to get into matching. Let's code this. Let's find some value matching behaviors that we can tool you up with and you can do consistently. They feel good. They're more likely to happen naturally because they match your values.
My goodness. My mind is like racing in so many different directions too now because I think like to the point of like the behaviors, right? Are we making healthy food choices? Is that something we're modeling? How are we interacting with people in social settings? What are the words and the phrases that we're using when we're talking to others? Like if there's tense family dynamics, right? Like if there's a mother-in-law, grandmother, an aunt, an uncle that you personally as the parent don't get along with, how are we modeling how to handle those difficult conversations or interactions? Because chances are if your child goes to school, they're going to be having some of those
Yes.
people that they don't get along with too. So what is the behavior at school based on how things are happening in the
Right.
family?
They heard you talking to your spouse about how you can't stand how his mom does this or that, or they heard you talking about talking to your friend on the phone about some drama, and then you're like, "What were you doing talking about this other girl? We don't tolerate bullies in my house," but this is what we're modeling. They are always listening and they are watching.
Yes.
And we just kind of forget that that's like our parents did model to us, and sometimes our parenting behaviors match exactly what we were modeled, or there's some like I will never, I'm going the opposite direction. They serve as non-examples, but even still, just because it happened, most of the time that is the default. And so the effort that is required to go against the default will require you to take care of yourself enough to access the new skills because your mom lives in you or your parenting models lives in you as your default because they modeled it to you. That teacher at school or the whole school, how they did things, that lives in you now. And if you saw it kind of work, my mom did this, I turned out all right. My parent did this, and I'm all right. That question gets changed often, huh? What does that mean? What does all right mean? So just understanding that in order to access this new type of parenting, there's all kinds of parenting names and frameworks out there: conscious parenting, gentle parenting, authoritative parenting, all the things. I always say go to Barnes and Noble and go to the parenting section. It is huge. You wanna know why? Because nobody knows what they're doing, okay? This is very difficult stuff. So at least let's start with learning about ourselves, like who we are, acknowledging that we are models. I mean, that's all we can do. Like, if I want to model to I would consciously want to model to my kids to be rigid and firm, super boundaried and hard workers. I want to be able to consciously model that, not accidentally, right? Now, I'm more flexible than that, but there are some values and some beliefs, it's core beliefs that I would love to help them introduce them to, knowing that they're going to learn more things from the world. But at least let's do that consciously because there's so many tools out there. I
Yeah.
cannot have all the right answers as a BCBA, as a special ed teacher, parenting coach. Like, I'm here. My commitment is to be with you as we learn your learner and teach you
Mm.
how to do that. Learn what your values actually are. Many people do not have access to understanding what their values are. They just notice that when their little boy cries, they get super upset. Like, I had a dad say, "Is it because I'm a man to a boy child that I get so upset when my child cries?" Like, he's mastering other goals. The child is doing all the things he's supposed to be doing. He still cries. And I was like, "Were you allowed to cry?
Mm.
Was crying encouraged even as an expression of feelings?" He's like, "Absolutely not." So whether you're because you're male and you're raising a boy or not, it could be none of those, right? Your model of behavior, the model that you had said that this was unacceptable. He was like, "Oh my goodness, I never thought about that." And so what is the value here? Well, I want my son to be respected. All right, you have a value for respect. I want my son to be safe from bullying and all the things. Okay, you have a value for protection and safety for your son. And there's some activities and things and ways to start to understand your own values. But because he has this value for safety and protection, without new tools, value's still the same. But all he's got is don't cry. You're gonna get bullied and no one's gonna respect you or me as your dad. So I have this value here. I didn't even know what that was. I didn't know I had a value for respect or protection because no one ever labeled that for me. And now what do I want to do? What are the behaviors that actually support that? Saying don't cry for your whole life is not going to help your child feel validated and seen and known and teach them what to do instead. Um, exploring their own childhood is a really great way of identifying those values and how they end up parenting. Like, whoa, this while I didn't like the action of my parent, I do share this belief and this value with them. So what are my behaviors that I want to do that keep to the value, keep to the belief, be obedient? I always used to have a hard time with the word obedience. It just sounded so like rigid and firm. I do want my kids to trust me enough to listen to what I asked them to do, but then also I wanted to have space, leave space for them to be curious and ask questions. Not while I'm telling them what, like not in the moment, right? But for us, if they were curious, like, why did you want me to get out, like move right then? Why did you want me to sit next to this person? That they have space in my family and with my values to ask me questions later after they follow through family, so that they have understanding. I don't believe in my family. My value is not for blind compliance, blind obedience, just do because I said. I would like for you to have understanding for the logic. That way, when I'm not around, for you to obey. I know it's just my word triggers for me, but for others, that's the word, that's the value, obedience. For me, it is mutual respect and respect for my role as a parent. So, and trust, right? For others, it's obedience. So I go with that. If it's obedience, what does that look like for you? And how do we model that first? First things first. Are you doing it? Are you obedient? Are you respectful?
Oh my goodness. Well, Treichae, thank you so much for bringing such honesty and heart to the conversation today. You've given us powerful reminders that behavior is communication and that peace is possible and that we're all whole just as we are. To our listeners, and those that are parenting a neurodivergent child too, that are trying to hold on to their own identity while showing up for everyone else. You're not alone. You're doing brave, important work with leading your children and your family. And there is support out there that's available to you. So you'll find links to Treichae's caregiving, coaching, consulting, and parenting resources in the show notes. And until next time, I hope you give yourself permission today to be exactly who you are.